see, this is the effect we're trying to create, right? And if you look, it should be rough everywhere, but it shouldn't be shiny equally everywhere. So there's some areas where it's very shiny, and other areas where it can be a little bit shiny, but not as like razor sharp as this. And that's the key to making something look like it has a puddle as opposed to just something that looks like wet. Like that's one thing you see all the time in renderings where they'll look super flat or super shiny, but it's like everything is like that, where it's like perfect. And that's never really the case. Like this is more often what you see. Usually what you see in renderings is something like that, where it's so crazy that it's like not even believable anymore, like this one. So when you get like a good, well done one, you can get something like that. And to do that, all we need to do is take this material and give it a map here for reflections. So you're going to add a texture here, and then I'm going to go find this one, and put it on there. Now I'm going to go into it. And see how I lost the ability to adjust the reflectivity? I'm like, all right, great, it's gone. It's not even shiny anymore. All that is in here. So if I click in here, see now I have that there, and I can invert this, and I still can't really tell what's going on, right? And it's like you can kind of tell there when you do this. But if you go into explicit, this is why it's because it's really small right now. So I can put like 80 by, and for some reason it's in meters. I don't know why. But once you do that, and then you play around with the rotation, maybe that was too big. But notice here, now I've got a puddle there. And then if this isn't right, you can invert it back the other way. Invert it. And keep rotating until you get your puddle where you like. And then now you go to general. And so that helps you now have some sort of control there. So the bump you can kind of make it a little bit smoother. But it's not always a perfect reflection you can get there. And then if this is too big, we just shrink this, maybe make it 20. And where you'll really notice it is once we start playing around with the time of day, and you get kind of that effect where it's kind of far away. So see how like just something as simple as that can really bring the foreground and make it interesting. And see, it's not a whole lot of work. You just gotta kind of play around with those settings and look at how it's able to pull the sky into the foreground and add a lot of realism without a whole lot of work. And if it's not in the right spot, you just rotate it. Because I'm only rotating the map. It's not like the whole image is getting rotated. And so you can give it a little bit of something in the foreground. The next one I would do that a lot of people struggle with is glass. And so the reason glass can get tricky is that there's different things that can affect what you have in the glass. The big thing is like if you don't have anything for it to reflect, it's going to be hard for it to look like real glass. Which the nice thing with Enscape is you get that full dome around you with like the sky and the shadows. So it's very easy to add glass and then have it look good. So we're just going to go to, let's say, where's glass? Transparent? No. Glass. I like the gray glass. I'm just going to put this on as the default one. And then notice just by doing that, it's already gone in here and done something to the glass. Whether that's what you wanted or not, that's like the default setting. And then we can kind of come around here and you can see there, it's still giving you kind of those reflections. And then to adjust this, we do the exact same thing. You come over here, you click the material one, so translucent gray glass. And here it has a bunch of settings that we can adjust. The other thing to keep in mind is that in SketchUp, you can apply the glass and then you reverse the face, and sometimes it's not applied to the back. So always make sure you, on transparent materials, that you apply it and then reverse the faces and apply it again. Because sometimes it only gets put on one side and the back side is not glass, it's like a solid color, and then your glass never reads right. So here I would say the texture color, you can apply a texture if you want, but I mean glass is glass. And then the color, notice if you tint it, it changes completely kind of what it looks like. And so this has a big impact. So there's standard colors, and if you go to advanced, you can get like any color you want. So it's not like you're ever limited. You can get that kind of looking the way you like. Transparency or solid, you can play with that. And then opacity is how solid or how transparent the glass becomes. I don't think it lets you go to 100 because then it doesn't become glass anymore at that point. You're just not transparent. So play around with that. And then tint color, a lot of people get confused on this one. It's not the actual color of the glass. The tint is going to affect the lighting once the lighting comes through the glass. So you can have tint, see how like the lighting once it's in there is turned red, or you can have it just white or black, and so like it does kind of give it an effect, but it's affected mostly as it goes through the glass. And then the refractive indexes, I'm sure you've seen this phenomenon when you're looking at a cup of water or you're looking in like at the beach at the water when you're like put your hand in it. Like light will bend differently once it goes into a different material like glass or water, and it will kind of go off at an angle. This affects that. So when if you can see things behind the glass and also not behind the glass, this is you'll have to play around with it. If you don't have that condition, it's not as big of a deal. And then if you want frosted, you can play with this setting and it'll frost it or not. There's other ways to get it without having to do that. And texture, if you wanted to give it depth, you could do that. If not, you can leave it. And then the roughness is another way you can give it frost. There are kind of different effects. But I would say this one you want to leave pretty low down. And then the specular is the one a lot of people forget. So notice how if I go way to the left, it looks frosted. And if I go way to the right, it looks really, really clear. So that's the one that really can make glass look really good or not right. And so you can see I didn't change a whole lot, but just by playing around with those few settings, I was able to take my glass and get it looking exactly the way I wanted. And that was just going quick. You guys can play around with these and get them however you want. Or play with something a little more transparent. The key is like, does it look right throughout the day? And then at night, once you start adding lighting inside, and do you get the right effect? And then one thing that's super cool with Enscape that is really surprising is you can add water just by like clicking here, like water. So let's see, what is that, water stream? I don't know, this one. Oh, it's like that. But see here, like, and that looks pretty realistic. I mean, obviously it's weird that my building is just sitting perfectly at the edge of the water, but the water itself looks pretty good. And then you can, just like the other stuff, this can be adjusted and have different settings. And let's say now I don't want that. Now I want to put like wood. on here. I can find wood. And get that on there. I don't remember if this was supposed to be wood too or not, I don't know. But anyway. So I've got that there. And then when you adjust the settings here, it's the same process. So like, do I want this to be shiny? I'll typically move around like this and get my lighting so that I get like a nice kind of range of colors on there. Like if you go too far on one way, you can't tell kind of what's going on. And essentially when we're here, I can start playing around with this and adjusting. Maybe I'll use this. You could also apply, let's do that. Let's do a material where it looks totally different. So let me adjust the roughness here. And one thing that could be pretty cool, yeah, let's do that. Let's make this look like tile without even actually having tiles here. So instead of water, let's just go in here and let's just get a color. I know there's tiles in here, but let's just go color. And then maybe I'll just use a random color. Oops, I got the whole ground. I meant just this guy. So with this, it's just a color, right? But then if we go online and you find like, you can get cool maps like this, which either have texture in them, or you can get like just the grout lines, because right, like a tile wouldn't have the same reflectivity across the whole thing. So let me show you here. If I start making that material, so let's grab this one. Didn't I assign a material here? There, whatever, this color. If I start making this shiny by smoothing it out, see, it just looks like a perfect smooth thing. But if I had tile, it wouldn't be that way, right? It would have like grout at some spots where the grout would not be shiny. And so whenever you do tile, if you don't adjust these settings, as you see it kind of vanishing away in the background, you'll notice that like it just starts looking like water because the reflection starts to take over. And it's one of those things that is always like a big giveaway. But if we set this up correctly, we can save an image kind of like one of those. But let's see, maybe we'll grab, oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do something like this. This could be cool. So I'm gonna hit save image as. Oops. And then under the, not on the bump map, I'm only going to do the reflection map. So check this out. And then I'm going to go into here and invert it. And then notice how it's only reflective kind of where the tiles are, or the pavers for that matter. But in between where we had the grout, it's like a lighter color, so it's not as intense. And if you flip it, you can see the opposite happening, where maybe the paver itself isn't reflective, but you make like kind of the piece in between shiny. And so you could combine this with like any of those other tools we did earlier. And so see how now even way out there, it still has texture. Whereas when we didn't have this, there was no texture there at all. See how like that just instantly looks super fake and super like unrelatable to us because we never experienced anything like that unless you like laid out a like water over a whole floor. But as soon as you put something like this in there, now there's a scale to it and we can start to understand what's going on there. Even if it's wrong, you just use this to adjust it. Or maybe you do 1.5. And if you want it rotated. So check that out. So now you have reflections, but they're not like perfect reflections. They have some sort of kind of thing there. And the color is coming from here. So if we change it, or you change it in SketchUp, I mean, or in your other rendering software, whatever material you're using, you can grab in here. So if it's not the right color. But see, the map is always going to be the same. So as we start making the lighting go more towards that side, start getting something like that. So see, this can look really good, especially when you get lighting across it like that. It gives you a lot of realism. It's a pretty easy way to do it. So now let's go back to my view from before. So if I was trying to set this up, let's go to the actual view.